All right, it's time for our fortnightly debate from the Liberal Party, Kelly O'Dwyer, the member for Higgins. Hello, Kelly.
Hello, Tom.
And representing the Labor Party, the member for Corio, Richard Miles. Richard, hello.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
Now, firstly, I don't know if either or both of you heard Bill Shorten with Neil Mitchell this morning. Bill Shorten kept saying, I stand by the Prime Minister, I support the Prime Minister, but he would not engage Neil's question, which was for how long. Richard, what's going on up in Canberra?
Well, we're governing is the answer. And like Darren, one of your callers before, what we'd like to talk about is the governing that we're doing. I mean, you know, we are investing in our school system in a way which hasn't been done before, and we'd like to see the Liberals come on board with this, which they're not doing.
Well, if it's all going so well and you've got all these good policies, why do people keep avoiding the question about the leadership? Well, why not put it to bed?
Well, I think the short answer to that question is it was dealt with in March. But this question keeps being asked by journalists in, you know, as many different ways as they can find to try and get the nuance, which gets a different layer. I mean, at the end of the day, this is an issue which was decided back in March. I support the Prime Minister. She's doing a great job in very difficult circumstances.
I thought you were friends with Kevin Rudd.
And it is possible to be friends with both. And yeah, you describe me as a big Kevin Rudd supporter. I am, unashamedly. I think Kevin's a great asset to the Labor Party. I think the Prime Minister is also doing a great job in difficult circumstances. But the point is that to sort of keep engaging on this actually then gets in the way of us trying to talk about what we're doing, which is, you know, changing the schools for kids in Australia in a way which will see millions of extra dollars go to schools around Victoria. So if you've got a kid who's got trouble reading, there will be reading recovery.
Well, I do want to tackle the issue of the Gonski education reform shortly, but Kelly O'Dwyer, over to you. I mean, with your keen political ear, do you sense that there might be a coup, a night of the long knives, possibly next Thursday?
Well, it's interesting that Richard says that the government is interested in governing, because I'm very confident that the media aren't making all of this up. I'm very confident that the Liberals and the Nationals are very keen to talk about policy. The real thing that's happening here and that's happening in Canberra is that Labor members themselves are giving briefings to journalists about the fact that they no longer support Julia Gillard as Prime Minister. We saw two Labor senators just this week launch a scathing attack in the Senate on the Prime Minister after she dumped Trish Crossan for her captain's pick, Nova Peris. We've seen Simon Crean and Martin Ferguson both be demoted to the backbench, and we've seen them also give a very scathing critique on the Prime Minister and her government and the fact that she has inspired this new rhetoric of class war and division. So I don't think it's right to say, Richard, that this is somehow some wonderful conspiracy that's been made up by others. It is definitely something that the Labor Party itself has been the architect of, and unfortunately we're all experiencing it.
So Tom, let me just... now I want to break one of the enormous secrets of Australian politics, which rarely gets out, which is that actually Liberal and Labor MPs quite like each other, and we get on and we often talk, and I have to say to Kelly, and I really like Kelly, you know, Jamie Briggs and others out there, my Liberal mates, they are veritably quivering with excitement about talking about the Labor leadership. So the idea that the Liberals are not talking about this themselves...
Are you friends with Bill Shorten?
Of course I'm friends with Bill Shorten. I've been friends with Bill Shorten since university. Indeed, I don't think you'll mind me saying this, Bill and I backpacked together during university. So
did you?
We did.
Oh,
so Vietnam and Laos.
So you're not
so
afraid of it?
So it would have been very uncomfortable for you, this whole leadership question, when you brought Kevin out to the electorate then.
Well, as I said, look, we are friends.
All friends.
We're all friends.
All good friends.
So why are we all talking about this then, Richard?
Well, I don't know. You're the one who's talking about it. All my Liberal mates are loving talking about it for obvious reasons. Well, we're trying to talk about governing the country.
Let's go to a couple of calls here. Mark, hello.
This is about policy.
Yeah, good.
Thank God.
Gonski is not going to be fully funded until 2019. That's 2 elections away, and we've got this going on where Paul House is in Canberra with the ear of the Prime Minister, the AWU. What about the ear of the people? We want an election, and we want to know what the policies are of Labor and where the funding's going to come from.
Well, actually, Kelly, I'm just going to put this one to you because...
Very good point.
Well, we know that Gonski's a Labor plan. It depends upon all the state premiers signing up, so that hasn't happened yet. My sources tell me that Gonski will be quietly dumped should you win the election, because it's a big spending plan, and you'll be able to say that, perhaps Victoria hasn't signed up, not all the states have signed up, therefore it's gone. Is that true?
Well, firstly, Mark has made an excellent point, Tom. He said quite rightly that the promised government funding isn't going to flow until 2019 and 2 elections' time. The first, though most critical point to note is that the government talks about delivering Gonski. The key recommendation of Gonski was $6.5 billion in new funding each and every year.
Sure, but will you
they're not
dump
delivering
it?
that.
But will you dump it?
So what we've said is that there are some good elements of the Gonski recommendations. So, for instance, special loadings for students who are in remote locations. We've also said that there are some good elements there where they talk about having a choice for students with disability, whether they go to a state school, whether they go to an independent or Catholic school. We support those aspects of Gonski. But what we don't support is the cuts that the government have made to school funding, which is $325 million. They've cut school funding. They're not increasing school funding.
And this is
no, it is right. It's based on the government's own figures and the very false figures that they have put in terms of the indexation arrangements that apply to schools right now. Plus, what really concerns me, Tom, is that the government is giving itself new powers it has never had before, to reach into independent and Catholic schools to approve specifically their school plans. Right. More than that, it's going to increase school fees because they have brought in the dead of night, in the 72 pages of amendments they rushed through the Parliament after gagging the debate, they said that they were going to look at parents' capacity to pay. Well, that is code for parents paying more.
Not
right.
Right.
I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll go to a break. We've got Tony Taddeo in for news headlines now. He's got his arms folded and a shish-eye cat-like grin upon his face. Richard Marles will have the opportunity for a reply after the break, and we'll have time for more of your calls. 96900 693. Kelly O'Dwyer, the Liberal member for Higgins, and Richard Marles, the Labor member for Corio, are in the studio, and they're taking your calls. 96900 693. Bob, hello.
Thank you for taking my call. Tom.
Pleasure.
Now, Tom, weren't you a barrister or a solicitor before you took this job?
No. I was in the finance industry. I did 1 year of law at university before I realised that the law and I didn't have much in common.
Oh, I see, because I thought you should put a charge of harassment against Neil Mitchell.
You think Neil harassed Bill Shorten this morning?
Totally and utterly. If I had the power, he would be before the court right now.
All right, thank you, Bob. I must say, Neil does like to. Neil does like to. No, Neil does like to press the issue a bit more. I mean, he will ask. I remember when the last interview that the former Premier Ted Bailey did with Neil Mitchell. Neil asked him the same question about 150 times, which is what journalists have to do. But
Sure.
I know that Ted Bailey didn't enjoy it very
I'm
much.
sure Bill can look after himself.
I'm pretty confident he can too. I'm pretty sure he's pretty good at dishing it out. I'm sure he can take a little bit back.
Can I ask you guys quickly before we go to more calls? I mean, do you hate journalists like me, people like me that just ask these stupid, repetitive questions, or I mean,
No,
be
it's
honest.
it's part of the business, and we, I mean, you ask the questions to get the answers you want, and obviously we take these opportunities to try and get across the messages we want.
But it's an important way to communicate as well, and you ask questions that people actually want to know the answers to, so that it's actually very important.
That's right.
All right, let's go to Dave. Hello, Dave.
G'day, Tom. How you going, mate?
Good, thanks, Dave.
Actually, for Richard, look, my wife and I have been Labor supporters forever. Never ever voted for anyone else. But honestly, with Julia Gillard in, we're not going to vote for her. And I just want to ask, how can you support someone that's going to make you lose your job, mate? I mean, Kelly's going to be sitting there all happy and you're just jobless.
Well, there you go, Richard.
Well, certainly your question has put a smile on Kelly's face.
It has now that you've said that.
Yeah.
But
Look, what I would say to you, Dave, is this. This has been as good a Labor government as there has ever been. And Julia Gillard has done a great job in very difficult circumstances in terms of managing a minority government. But if you've been a Labor voter all your life, this is a government which got us through the global economic crisis, saved hundreds of thousands of jobs, and they are working people.
Well, that bit was the Kevin Rudd bit, though.
Well, it's been Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard in terms of this government. This is a government. This is a government right now which is revolutionising our education system so that kids from poor and working class areas get a better run in their schools. This is a government which has reformed our health system so there is better access to public health. So if you are a long-term Labor voter, there is a lot in what has occurred since 2007 to see you to continue to vote for Labor.
Let's just change subject matter in the last 5 minutes while I've got the two of you. One of the coalition's big policy differences with Labor at the upcoming election will be the policy to turn back the boats. Tony Abbott's using it as a catchphrase. I'm sure it will come up a lot between now and September 14. Kelly, the Indonesian government is saying, well, they don't agree with it. And secondly, there's an editorial in The Age today written by Savitri Taylor, who says that it would be illegal under international law to turn back the boats. That in fact, and not to turn back the boats, also to deport people who might have got here, but then develop a criminal record. Are you at all worried by that? I mean, do you think that you should take any notice of these people that say that these policies to deport asylum seekers or stop them getting here in the first place might not actually be legal?
Well, the first thing I would say, Tom, is that the reason we're actually having to deal with this question at all is because the government changed the rules, and it's meant that more than 44,000 people have arrived here by boat on more than 730 boats since they changed the rules in 2008. Now, all we're talking about are temporary protection visas, offshore processing and returning back boats where it's safe to do so. Now, these are three of the critical things that we did when we were in government last time around. It wasn't illegal then. We don't believe it's illegal. We think it's going to be the only way that we can restore security to our borders and ensure that people don't take very dangerous journeys from Indonesia to come here to this country, organised by people smugglers.
Richard, your colleagues who come from Sydney, particularly Sydney's West, say that this is the Labor Party's biggest issue, that even recent migrants who live in Sydney's West, and Sydney's West is one of the great sort of immigration melting pots that we have in Australia, they say that they're not happy with what's going on. I mean, do you think Labor's done enough on this?
Well, we would like to do more, but this is an issue which is incredibly complex. And really, the editorial that you've seen from Savitri Taylor in today's paper, the point that you made about the Liberal policy of turning the boats back in circumstances where it's not possible because Indonesia is not going to accept them back, and that is plain for everyone to see. They are just two examples of how complex this policy is. Unless we are all on the same page, trying to work this problem out together, Liberal and Labor, then we don't have a hope. Now, that's why we set up the Houston panel to go out there, give us a set of ideas so that we can actually deal with this. One of them was the Malaysian arrangement, and what we're seeing is the Liberals absolutely refusing to come on board with that, because they've got no issue.
Rich, do you actually, though, take responsibility for this problem? I mean, we had less than 4 people in detention when we lost government in 2007. Now we've got more than 44,000 people who've arrived by boat. We've more than 20,000 people in detention now, some in community detention, some in more formalised detention arrangements, and we've got more than 1,000 children in detention, whereas we previously had none. I mean, do you not take some responsibility for this?
But here's the issue, Kelly. There are the idea that there are people in villages in Afghanistan or Sri Lanka or Pakistan pouring through Australian policy documents to work out whether or not they're on the move is absurd.
Well, but apparently there are more smugglers do that.
There are more people on the. There are simply more people on the move today than there were in 2007 when John Howard was Prime Minister. So that the external circumstances have changed significantly.
Let's go to some more calls. David, hello.
Oh, g'day, Tom. Look, thanks for taking my call.
Pleasure.
Look, I think there are bigger issues to play here, and I think there's a bit of a Nero complex, if I can call it that, and to hear two politicians in there that are paid by the public purse sitting there and giggling while I think Rome is heading towards some real problems really makes my blood boil. The leadership is not a baton that should be passed around. We need someone that is actually willing to step up and lead and get this place going again. I mean, Richard, you're sitting down there in Corio. My goodness, what your constituents must be thinking at the moment is about to happen down there.
David,
I'd love to see somebody with some foresight, some leadership, some strength to get on with it.
David, can I ask you just very quickly, if you could pick one leader, who would it be?
Out of our current batch?
Yes.
Malcolm Turnbull.
Okay, there you go. Malcolm Turnbull remains extraordinarily popular, I must say. We had a word in the street caller earlier from Gary about a serious accident in Murrumbina. It looks like it might have actually been on Dandenong Road in Malvern East. Ambulance Victoria sadly say an 80-year-old woman was hit by a car. The woman has been taken to Alfred Hospital with head and leg injuries. We might just take one more call here, 96900 693, outside Melbourne, 1332. Just quickly though, Kelly, I just want to go to Gonski. I mean, again, everything's either on or off the table if you win the election. I'm just, again, I keep hearing this, that if it's not passed by all the states before the election, it'll get dismantled because it's expensive. Is that going to be the Coalition's policy?
Well, we've said that the Prime Minister's deadline of 30 June is the deadline that all of the states have to sign up. We've said that we will formulate our policy after that, after we know whether the majority of states are on board or not.
9 days.
Yeah, so we'll be able to give a very direct answer to that once we know what the state of play is. But we are very sceptical about the claims that the government has made. We're very concerned about the cuts in funding to schools, and we will certainly not support that.
We better leave it there. Richard Marles, good to talk with you.
Good to talk to you, Tom.
Great
See you in
to talk
2
to you,
weeks.
Tom
Kelly
and Richard.
O'Dwyer, good to talk with you as well. It's